Hi everyone, welcome back. I have been having way too much fun playing around with my Natasha Denona palettes. Those of you who know me, you know that I started my project pan for 2023 and this is the first time that I'm doing a project pan. And part of this project, I'm also doing like a usage goals project. All of my eyeshadow palettes, I want to use every single one of them at least 2 times. And the past month, I have been focusing on Natasha Denona palettes. So I have a total of 7 Natasha Denona palettes. I've used each one at least 2 times in the past month. One of them, I actually hit a pan for the first time ever. I started my channel about 2 years ago and I have never, ever hit a pan on an eyeshadow. And I'm going to show you guys. This is from the Retro palette. And here is my first shade ever that hit pan. It's like a really teeny tiny pan here. But that makes me so happy and inspires me to continue to use my makeup because I would love to see more pans on this. But sadly, I need to move forward to another brand, and the next brand that I will be focusing on will be Huda Beauty. And I don't know, will I have as much fun as using my Natasha Denona palettes? I'm not sure, we'll see, because I had a lot of fun using these that I actually don't want to stop using them. I would love to continue using them and actually hit pan, but I do have a lot of eyeshadow palettes to go through. I have a total of like 78 or 79 and I do want to use all of them. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to move forward to another brand, but I figured since I have been using all these palettes, maybe I can rank them for you guys. So without further ado, let's get started. At the bottom is this palette. This is the Sunset palette. This is a very like warm tone palette and I think it's just a little too warm for me. It doesn't give me enough versatility and there's just nothing that is exciting or motivating for me from this palette. I'm not sure why I feel this way about it, but it's just the oranges and the browns and the golds, they're just for some reason not inspirational to me. And I'm not quite sure why. Maybe I'm just more of a cool tone girl, or I like, you know, like interesting colors. I love fall though. I love fall decor, but for some reason, the fall colors for my eyes is something that I don't naturally gravitate towards, but I do love fall lippies and fall blushes, but for some reason the warm tones are not attracting me, especially in this palette. Spot number 6 is my Natasha Denona Pastel palette. It's a really pretty palette, really pretty packaging, and I think the colors are really pretty too. But what's interesting is that for some reason I do not gravitate towards green colors, and I know some of you out there love green, love mint green, any kind of green eyeshadow, but these are not the kind of greens I gravitate towards. The only shades that I enjoyed using are more of the purple colors. I loved using this shade, beautiful, and I did really enjoy the toppers, this one and this one over here. I will try to insert some photos of the looks that I did. I also found that some of the shades were a little too powdery, and this, either this blue one or this blue, one of them actually would not stick to my eyelid. Pretty frustrating, and that's not something I would expect from a Natasha Denona very high-priced palette. Number 5 is the Natasha Denona Retro Glam Palette. This palette did not excite me at all when it came out. Again, I think it's the green shades. I'm just not a fan of the minty green shades. But the odd thing is that the more that I use this palette, the more I love it, and the more that I discover how versatile it is. Do have a nice variety between the greens and these sort of like pinky peachy colors here, and then you have this red shimmer, and then you have some browns thrown in there too. So you could, if you use your imagination, come up with a lot of different looks with this palette. But I think it's really the greens that I don't gravitate toward. Up next is the Natasha Denona Glam Palette. I feel like both of these palettes were pretty close. Like, they're kind of a tie, and for different reasons. Like this one, the green was kind of like eh for me, but with this one, I felt like it was not that versatile. But I love this palette because it is the safest palette that you will ever have. Any look that you do with this, it's just very everyday wearable. You could wear it to the office, you could wear it to an office party if you want to glam it up, but it will never be over the top, even if you try as hard as you can. So this is one of the safest palettes that you could reach for if you're running out the door and you need to get ready really fast to go to the office. I think it's a really good palette, good safe palette for a date night, for an office party, for day wear at your job. The formula is really good, and you are able to also create a few warm tone looks versus cool tone looks as well. So there is a little bit of versatility, but I don't think that these shades needed to be, how many? 15 pans. Like it could have been a smaller palette because some of them do look very similar on the eye. And this one would be a great gift to give to someone because they are pretty safe colors. Spot number 3 is the Natasha Denona Love Palette. I think this palette is so pretty. It's so inspiring. It's just absolutely beautiful. And I think it's because of the purples. And I'm starting to realize that I do really like the color purple. And some of these dark shades like this one, they're just so sultry and it looks so pretty on the eyes. And I think it has a good variety from like red to purple to pink. Here is pretty unique. Like I don't see this shade a lot in other palettes. But it's not on my number 1 spot because I feel like the shades are like a little too colorful for me to be wearing on an everyday. On an everyday, I like to keep my makeup a little bit toned down, especially my eyes. I'm comfortable going bold with lip colors, but for some reason, I get a little scared when I go bold with eye makeup on an everyday look. But otherwise, I think it's a really pretty palette and I have a lot of fun when I create a look with it. Spot number 2, the Natasha Denona My Dream Palette. When this palette came out, I went absolutely insane. I love the packaging, the theme, the My Dream theme, and I loved the shade names like Aspiration, Edgy, Spontaneous, Vision, Invention, Risk. I love that all these shades had interesting names and everything is just really inspiring, and the story behind the palette is also really inspiring and so personal to Natasha, and I love that. I did 10 looks with this palette when it originally came out, and I think the color story is absolutely beautiful. And there are some shades in here that I just go crazy over, like this shade, so pretty. Like this shade, the Vision one, is also really pretty, but I've like seen it before in other palettes. Maybe it's Pat McGrath, I'm not sure. But this shade is just so beautiful. As you can see, I've also used this shade a lot and this one over here. And there's also like different unique pinky shades that are dark, like over here. They're dark, but they're also vibrant. And with this palette, you can go a little edgy and vibrant, but you can also keep it toned down and a little bit subtle for every day. For example, you have these shades like Carpe Diem and this shade and this shade and this one. Like if you just use those shades all over the lid, you can create a pretty basic everyday look and maybe just add a little bit of shimmer with some of these other shades. And if you want to go bold, you have this one, this shade, you have black. Like there's a lot of versatility in this palette. I absolutely love it. I can go on and on. Even this shade is just such a yummy shade. This Familia brown shade is just I don't know, yummy is the word that I can come up with when I talk about this shade. That's weird. Really pretty palette. But it is not my #1 Natasha Denona palette, even though I have so many good things to say about it. #1
3, 2, 1.
is the Natasha Denona Retro palette. This palette, I feel like if you have this palette, you can survive the entire year without opening any other palette. That's how versatile it is, and that's how usable it is for an everyday basis. There's nothing inspiring about the color story. There's nothing inspiring about the theme for me. I don't have that sort of emotional reaction when I look at this palette, but I love this palette because it's just so usable, which is why I actually have hit pan on this palette because I use it so much. Like this shade, this mauve shade, I love this color. It's a great shade for the fall time that I can pair up with a mauve lipstick. It's a good balance of cool tones and warm tones. Like you can create a warm tone look or a cool tone look, a little bit of a neutral look, or you can add a little bit of color. You will not go crazy with color with this palette. It's kind of similar to Glam Palette, but it's a little bit more fun and there's a little bit more color in here. You can see that some of the shades that are in this palette are also in the Glam Palette. I mean, not exactly the same, but you know, looking at the colors, you can see that you can kind of see like the shades, like this one, and this one, and this one. They have more of a, and even this one have more of a Natasha Denona glam vibe. But then you can create warmer looks with like this shade over here and over here, and this patty shade over here. And what I like is that this palette also has 2 lighter shades, which is missing from the My Dream palette. The My Dream palette has a black shade, but it doesn't have like this sort of lighter cream shade. To have a full complete palette, you can have like a super dark shade, like a black shade, and then but also have a lighter cream shade, which there is none in the My Dream palette. And I also think there isn't much of a inner corner shade in here either. So although you can create a lot of fun looks with this, I feel like it's not a year-round palette with as much versatility as the Retro palette. The Retro palette is a little bit more on the duller, grungier side. It's not super vibrant, but I think that's what makes it super wearable on an everyday basis, and it's also a great year-round palette as well. I would love to keep using this palette and hit a few more pans. Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun using all of my Natasha Denona palettes. I hope I have just as much fun using my Huda Beauty palettes. We shall see. And I will, once I'm done with the Huda Beauty palettes next month, I will also rank my Huda Beauty palettes as well. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like button. Let me know in the comments below which Natasha Denona palette is your favorite. Thank you. Bye.